Lyle Shelton is a Family First candidate for the Upper House at the New South Wales election in late March. Lyle, you are running as an independent for the Upper House, but sounds like you're going to have a fair number of running mates.
Yeah, that's right. I'll be putting together a group of 15. We're backed by the Family First party, but we are running as an independent group, just given that the party registration wasn't able to be done in time due to New South Wales electoral laws.
And I note we're going to talk about a topic that's a hot one in New South Wales in a moment, but I do note that you've indicated that you will be preferencing One Nation, basically your first preference in the Upper House ticket. Why is that?
Because we want to make sure that we don't fragment the centre-right vote. There's a huge cohort of people, of voters, who are disillusioned with the major parties, particularly the Liberal Party, and they're going to values-based minor parties like Family First, like One Nation and others. And we believe that in the event that I'm not successful, we don't want the vote to be wasted. So we are allocating a second preference to One Nation, simply because Mark Latham has done a terrific job on religious freedom, on pushing back on the woke ideology in schools that so many mainstream people are upset about. And so while we don't agree on everything, there is a key values alignment on some very important issues.
And we'll talk about one of those ideology issues in a moment, but do you understand, are they going to reciprocate? Is One Nation going to give you a preference somewhere on their ticket as well?
My understanding is that they're not. Look, I'll leave it to them to make their announcements, but my understanding is they're not. But I wanted to show good faith. Look, the reality is, whilst I am in with a slim chance, and I certainly encourage people who are attracted to our platform to vote one for us, in the event that I'm unsuccessful, I don't want the vote to be wasted. I want to make sure we don't splinter the centre-right vote, and that it does go to someone who has a chance of getting elected and who will fight for many of the things that we are fighting for.
So it's an in-principle decision. Lyle, we're looking at the moment at this Alex Greenwich, the lower house MP, who could have a key vote if there's a minority government. He's put forward this bill on conversion practices. Chris Minns said about a week and a half ago he'd be banning conversion practices in New South Wales. Now Dominic Perrottet says the coalition will do the same. What is the Family First position on these pushes to ban conversion practices?
Well, it depends what you mean by conversion practices. If it means giving people electric shocks to make them turn heterosexual or whatever, or coercive practices, of course that should be banned. But the reality is none of those things happen anymore, if they ever did happen. And they are not. There's no examples of contemporary examples of this practice occurring. So they're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. But the devil's in the detail, and Alex Greenwich has said his legislation is modelled on the Victorian and Queensland and ACT legislation. In Victoria, a parent can be jailed for having a discussion with their child about gender-fluid ideology, trying to encourage their child not to go to a child gender clinic and have puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or even worse, surgery that's irreversible to try and change their gender. Now, this is outrageous. This is the status in Victoria. And Alex Greenwich wants to bring that, smuggled in under the cover of so-called conversion therapy, a bill which will jail parents and other people who seek to help a child from harming themselves. And this is what's really got to be brought to the light. Dominic Perrottet has got to explain whether or not he will support the jailing of parents who simply try and protect their child from harmful LGBTIQA+ gender-fluid clinics.
And I notice the Australian Christian Lobby, if I recall correctly, had indicated they believe the Bible in some contexts was banned in Victoria. Was it because of this conversion legislation in Victoria?
Look, I think their concern is, and I share it, is that the legislation in Victoria also banned prayer. Of course, the Bible encourages people to pray. And, of course, many people come to their spiritual advisors, to pastors, priests, imams, seeking prayer for unwanted same-sex attraction or unwanted feelings of gender dysphoria. Now, if someone requests prayer, they should be allowed to be prayed for. And the person who prays for that, who responds to that request, should not be put in jail for doing so. These laws are draconian, they are dangerous, and they are a Trojan horse for something far beyond the problem that they purport to solve.
There's a sudden rush on this one with the coalition saying they'll do what Labor's going to do and ban conversion practices. It all comes in the midst of, is it Midsummer or other LGBT pride events? Why doesn't the Christian community or even other faith communities have events or activist weeks where they try and draw political commitments from politicians?
That's a very good question. Well, Christians and values people and even mainstream Australians, we've disengaged from the political process. The LGBTIQA plus activists have not disengaged, and they've got taxpayer-funded pride flags all over Sydney at the moment for the World Pride Festival, which is happening next week here. And every public railway station, the airport, again, taxpayer-funded propaganda about their political movement, which of course sexualises children, and it teaches children that their gender is fluid. This is not a political agenda or a festival that should be funded by the taxpayer. It has dangers for children. And yes, other groups like Christians should petition the government to help them spread their gospel as well.
And Lyle, I just noticed when we've got this whole activism going on from, say, Alex Greenwich, the member for Sydney, he's in the lower house. The government, whoever they might be, Labor or the coalition, may be concerned they want his vote. In the upper house, there could be a balance of power held there by the likes of yourself or, say, Mark Latham from One Nation. Yeah,
well, this is why Family First is backing my campaign. We would have loved to have had Family First on the ballot paper, but the rules are different here in New South Wales. We're new in our rebirth. But it's so important that we do get a sensible crossbench in the upper house to block the radical political correctness agenda of the likes of the Alex Greenwiches of this world. The upper house really is the only opportunity to stop this, and that's why I'm running. And if I could be there with the likes of Latham and other people of goodwill, there is a chance some of the madness could be stopped. We could protect children, and we could keep religious freedom open and have a voice for mainstream values.
Now, Lyle Shelton, a candidate for Family First in the upper house. I know you've got to go in a moment, but you mentioned Dominic Perrottet. We were talking about his position on this issue earlier. I noticed that Clubs New South Wales sacked their main spokesperson or CEO after he made comments about Mr Perrottet's faith. Do we have an unseemly scenario? Is this a regular thing that's happening now? Is people in the political space are being attacked for their faith views?
Yes, we do. It's more and more of a problem. So we've seen here Dominic Perrottet alleged that because he was taking a strong stance against poker machines. One thing I do agree with Dominic Perrottet on, I wish he would apply his Catholic social justice positions, to some of these other issues that affect children. But quite rightly, he looks at evidence, but also has an ethic informed by his faith. That's appropriate, but he was attacked for that. Now, I don't think the guy should have been sacked for saying that. I think there's too much cancel culture. But nonetheless, it does highlight the fact that there is anti-Christian and anti-Catholic bigotry in our society. I'm all for tolerance for same-sex attracted people. That's fine. But that tolerance has now turned into bigotry against Christians, and we're seeing it, way too much. And I think we need to pause and take stock of just where we're going as a society and have a bit more tolerance for one another and have proper public debate about the sort of policy positions that are being put forward by various activist organisations.
Well, that's Lyle Shelton. He's running in the upper house for Family First in the state election late March. Thanks for joining us briefly today, Lyle.
Pleasure, Ricky. Thanks for having us.